Your parents didn't give you a gift. They gave you a death sentence. The moment you were born, the clock started ticking. Every breath you take is one step closer to the grave. Every joy you experience is borrowed time before the inevitable collapse. And the cruelest part? You never asked for any of it. Zeke Yeager is the only character in Attack on Titan who loved his people enough to erase them. Not out of hatred, not out of revenge, but because he understood something most people spend their entire lives refusing to accept existence itself as the problem. This isn't a story about a villain. This is a story about a man who tried to save the world by turning off the lights. When you're 7 years old, you're supposed to believe your parents are heroes. You're supposed to think they have all the answers. Zeke Yeager realized his parents were liars at 7. Grisha Yeager didn't see his son as a child. He saw him as a weapon, a tool to restore Eldia's glory. Every bedtime story was propaganda. Every hug came with a mission briefing. You're special, Zeke. You're going to save our people. But here's the terrifying part. Zeke believed him. For years, he carried that weight. The burden of an entire race's future on the shoulders of a child who just wanted to play catch. And then he met Tom Saver. Saver was the first person who didn't want anything from Zeke. He didn't care about Eldian restoration. He didn't care about Marley's oppression. He just wanted to throw a baseball back and forth in an empty field. For the first time in his life, Zeke felt human. Not a warrior, not a savior. Just a kid playing a pointless game with someone who cared. And that's when the question started forming in his mind. If the only time I feel alive is when I'm doing something meaningless, what does that say about the meaningful things? At what age did you realize your parents were flawed? Zeke realized it at 7. Most of us get the luxury of waiting until we're teenagers. We get to have a childhood before the disillusionment sets in. Zeke never had that luxury. He turned his parents in to the Marleyan authorities, sent them to Paradise Island, to be turned into Titans. And when people ask why he did it, they expect some grand ideological answer. The truth is simpler. He was tired of being a pawn, tired of the mission, tired of pretending that any of this suffering had a point. But the real horror hadn't even started yet. Let me ask you a question. If you could guarantee your child would never suffer, never be oppressed, never be eaten by a Titan, never experience the crushing weight of existence, but the cost was that they would never be born, would you take the deal? Zeke did. His plan wasn't genocide in the traditional sense, it was mercy, the euthanasia plan. Sterilize every Eldian so that no more children would be born into this nightmare, let the current generation live out their lives in peace, and then silence. No more Titans. No more wars, no more suffering, just the void. People call it nihilism. Zeke would call it compassion. Think about it. If you're never born, you can't be eaten alive. You can't watch your friends die. You can't be used as a weapon by people who claim to love you. You can't experience the slow, agonizing realization that all your struggles were for nothing. You just don't exist. And in Zeke's mind, that's not a tragedy. That's salvation. Armin Arlet once said that life is worth living for the small moments. The leaves falling, the feeling of running, the taste of good food. Zeke heard that argument, and he rejected it. Because here's the thing about those small moments, they're biological traps. Your brain releases dopamine to keep you playing the game. Evolution doesn't care if you're happy. It just wants you to survive long enough to reproduce. Those moments of joy, they're the bait. The suffering is the hook. And Zeke refused to take the bait anymore. But then, everything changed when he met his brother again. Eren Yeager. The boy who screamed, "I was born into this world," like it was a battle cry. Zeke thought he understood Eren. He thought Eren was another victim of Grisha's manipulation. Another child crushed under the weight of a father's dreams. Zeke saw himself in Eren. He thought he was saving him. "I'll free you from our father's brainwashing," Zeke promised. "I'll show you the truth." And then in the past, that timeless dimension where past, present, and future collapse into a single frozen moment, Zeke tried to prove it. He dragged Eren through Grisha's memories, showed him every moment of manipulation, every lie. "See," Zeke said, "we're both victims. Let me save you." Eren looked at him and smiled. "You don't get it, do you? I'm not a victim. I'm the one who pushed him." Zeke's entire worldview shattered in that moment. Eren wasn't rejecting life because it was painful. He was embracing it because it was a struggle. Suffering wasn't a bug, it was the feature. Eren didn't want to be saved from existence. He wanted to fight for the right to exist. One brother wanted to end the game. The other wanted to flip the board and keep playing anyway. Zeke represented surrender. Eren represented defiance. And in that clash, you see the fundamental question that Attack on Titan has been asking from the beginning. Is it better to suffer and fight, or to never have existed at all? Zeke chose the void. Eren chose the fire. But here is the terrifying part. Neither of them was wrong. Zeke's final moments are the most tragic in the entire series, not because he died, but because he finally found a reason to live 1 second too late. Armin found him in the paths, broken, defeated, watching the sand fall through his fingers for eternity. Ideally, I shouldn't have been born, Zeke said. But that day the weather was nice. One memory. One perfect afternoon playing catch with K-Saver. One moment where the suffering didn't matter because the sun was shining and the ball was flying, and for just a second, existence felt like a gift instead of a curse. And that's when Zeke made his choice. He stepped out of the paths, faced Levi one last time, and let himself be killed. Not because he lost the argument, but because he finally understood what Armin had been trying to tell him. Maybe the small moments are enough. Maybe the fact that one afternoon felt perfect is worth all the pain that came before and after. Or maybe he just got tired of being right. Zeke Yeager died believing that life was suffering, but in his last breath he admitted that maybe, just maybe, there was something beautiful hidden in all that pain. The baseball, the blue sky, the feeling of being human for just one afternoon. Was it worth it? Was that one moment of peace worth a lifetime of agony? Zeke spent his entire life saying no, and then at the very end he whispered yes. So let me ask you again. Would you choose to be born, knowing everything you know now, knowing the pain, the loss, the crushing weight of existence, knowing that every person you love will die, that every dream you chase might crumble, that the universe is indifferent to your suffering? Would you still choose to exist? Eren would scream yes without hesitation. He'd fight and claw and destroy the world just to prove he had the right to be here. Zeke would quietly say no. He'd argue that the void is kinder than the struggle, that non-existence is the only true freedom. And most of us, we're somewhere in between. Some days we're Eren, screaming at the sky. Some days we're Zeke, wondering why we're even here. Attack on Titan doesn't give you an answer. It just forces you to ask the question. Zeke Yeager wasn't a villain. He was a man who loved the world so much that he wanted to save it from itself. He looked at the endless cycle of birth, suffering, and death, and said enough. And maybe that's not evil. Maybe that's just exhaustion. Maybe Zeke was wrong. Maybe Eren was wrong. Maybe they were both right. Or maybe the only thing that matters is that one perfect afternoon when the weather was nice and a broken man played catch with the only person who ever saw him as human. That's the mercy of the void. That's the tragedy of existence. And that's why Zeke Yeager is the most human character in Attack on Titan. Because he asked the question we're all too afraid to ask. What if we're better off never being born? And then, at the very end, he found one reason to say, but I'm glad I was.